GM everyone, this is Naruto. Today we have Ram from Router and then Shubham, Router as well. Ram is a co-founder and CEO, and then Shubham he leads all the technical stuff as a CTO and co-founder. So we'll just go with introductions. Ram, can you have a little bit introduction for the audience, and then Shubham, can you go next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Naruto, for having us, having Doctor on the show. Um, Super excited to be here. Always a big fan of your hot take series. So excited to have the opportunity to finally be a part of one. Um, Quick background on myself: engineer, and then MBA. Spent time in consulting and finance, mostly in the US, and then in Singapore and London. Yeah, pretty much around the world. Slightly older compared to the average or the median Web3 demographic, but yeah, having a lot of fun. Web3 keeps me young. Uh, got into crypto sometime in 2014 or 15. Heard about crypto in 2010 when my neighbor in London was mining Bitcoin. Unfortunately, did not listen to him. Um, yep, one of those stories, right? And yes, my first foray into crypto was in 2015 when I was trying to, in the banking side of things, I was an investment banker in Singapore. I was doing a lot of business in the private market space, making markets in unlisted high-tech stocks like Uber, Alibaba, Airbnb. So at the point in time, we had a small investment vehicle that invested in these, and we would sell this down to family offices and investors in that part of the world, Singapore, Southeast Asia, so on and so forth. And uh, I discovered Ethereum, and I was like, why don't we tokenize this? And at that point, the technology was pretty premature, so we ended up using something called Bitcoin and colored coins to actually build a platform that would let folks share a tokenized version of pre-IPO securities, right? And then very quickly, I figured out that the issue was not the technology, but the legal framework for a lot of this. So that's why whenever, even today, when people talk about RWS and tokenization, it's not the technology, right? It's about the regulatory minefield. You need a bunch of lawyers. You don't need a bunch of developers from Stanford. So anyway, digress. Yeah, that was my first foray into crypto. 2017, met up Shubham. We're building a ton of things. Built a relayer called Fodex back in the day on top of 0x. Then built Crypto Index. Did some arbitrage during one of the crypto winters. Started Router in late 20, early 21, and yep, we'll delve more into Router during the course of this conversation. And let me hand over the mic to Shubham.
Shubham, you want to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, sure, Naruto. Hello, everyone. As Ram mentioned, right? So I started my Web3 journey around 2017. Before that, I was a software engineer in Web2 space. I've, I've got to work on various interesting problems around AMMs, matching engines, algorithmic bots. Most of my experience in Web3 has been around tech, how to scale the tech, how to make it more secure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ram was the earliest one among us to get into crypto. Uh, I heard about, I think, Bitcoin in 2016
Mhm.
or 2017. Like my roommate, he jumped out of his room and he comes to my room and he's like, "Do you know what this Bitcoin thing is?" And I'm a computer science major. I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard about it." And then he goes like, "Oh, we should buy it." And then that's when we in 2017 was the first time when I signed up for Coinbase account. For some reason, they didn't even KYC me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy something, right? And then the first thing I bought was, I think it was Bitcoin. That was probably $5,000 that time, and I'm like, I'm a college, like I'm a broke college student, so I'm gonna just put like $100, $200 into it. And then by the time I realized, I started putting in my whole college tuition fee until like 2019. Like I was actually like trading crypto, and then everything crashed. So there were like good stories coming out of that situation, honestly.
Well, how did you end up paying your fees though?
That's a good question. Uh, I started working, like different jobs. So I remember, like in summers, I was working 80 hours a week just to like so that I can pay my tuition fee for next semester, and then I don't have to like ask my parents for it, because they're like, "Oh, we just sent you," and like any money that I get from parents, I was putting it into like Coinbase, buying Ethereum and Bitcoin. So that was like some crazy things.
Right, 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 right.
So
Well, I'm sure the $5,000, the $100 worth of Bitcoin is probably at least a lot more right now.
it paid off. It paid off. The best thing is like when 2019 crash happened, I stopped using it because there were nights I couldn't sleep. And right after that, I just, like forgot about Coinbase. And I'm like, I'm not gonna touch it for a while. So
Mhm.
it appreciated in value. But yeah, those were like some, good and bad days.
Awesome. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Anyway, so let's move forward to router. Like, do you wanna explain a little bit of like, in deep with technical terms on what is router, what is the big picture here, where you guys are headed? Anyone is free to take the question and then follow up Shubham or
Um, Shom, you want to go first or?
You take abstract.
Okay,
Uh,
sure, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'll give you my perspective and sort of touch upon and I've seen that these conversations, depending on how much time you have, and feel free to pull me back, Naruto, at any point because I can, raconteur away, and before you know it, the whole session is gone. But just a bit of stopping on the Genesis story, right? Back in the day, back in I guess 2020 DeFi summer, um, one of the things that we were in actually 2018 or something when we were working in Bangalore, right? I now remember Shubham discussing with our chief blockchain architect called Venkatesh, one of the early Polygon OG engineers. He's now leading blockchain architecture for Router. They were discussing how, hey, listen, we have Bitcoin, we have Ethereum, and then back then there was Ripple and a few other chains. And I was a fly on the wall, and these guys are discussing, hey, how can these blockchains talk to each other, right? So that's my first recollection of interoperability as such. And then sometime in 2020, I was speaking to Sandeep Nalwal of Polygon. And obviously, the guy's great, man. The vision of, yeah, we all know, right? And he was the one who sent us down this direction, right? There's going to be a ton of blockchains right now. It's Polygon summer, a lot of stuff happening, but eventually there's going to be a profusion of blockchains. So why don't you look at the interop space? So that's how we got started. And clearly, it is a massive, massive thing. I'll just use one analogy, a couple of analogies actually. One from the software industry, how that evolved, right? So in Web 2, before 2023, before 2005, right? You had a situation where, and when I started my career first, I was a software engineer in Long Island, New York, right? And when we had to develop software, we had WebLogic, WebSphere, all these app servers, and we had three sets of installs, right? One was the Linux, Unix, and WebLogic, and that whole stack. And then there was a WebSphere, IBM WebSphere, and then they had their own IBM server stack. And then there was the Windows, Microsoft Windows stack, and then they had mixing and matching of app servers, the underlying servers, and so on and so forth, right? And so that was from a developer experience, and from an end user experience, again, we had to customize this big time for every browser, every operating system. The Mac team had a different challenge as compared to the Windows team, and then you had those early emerging Palm Pilots and Handsprings, if you ever remember those names, right? So it was a nightmare, very fragmented developer experience and very fragmented end user experience, right? And fast forward to 2005, and all these problems magically go away, right? And as a developer, you are optimizing for your AWS Docker or your whatever cloud, right? And obviously, there's some front end tweaking, but for the most part, as long as you have, you know, and it is far more standardized than it was. It became far more standardized than it was even 2000, 2001, right? As an end user, I mean, all you needed was a Google Doc link for the most part, right? Or apps were basically wherever, whichever platform you had a pretty much unified end user experience, right? So, so that is where, and that what happened after that was Web2 just took off, right? You had a profusion of dApps, and obviously the mobile thing happened, and then yeah, it just became the UI UX thing became so standardized and seamless. The developer experience became so standardized and seamless. Uh, interoperability is exactly in the 2000 pre 2005 space, right? And for a multitude of reasons, which we'll get into, right? And you have the UI UX issues, security issues, complexity, so on and so forth. But effectively, the cloud movement has to come, right? I think the moment the cloud movement happens in Web3, you're going to have folks just seamlessly coming in. It's like a car, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a Mercedes or a Toyota or a Honda, whatever, right? You just get in, there's a steering, there's broadly these buttons, and you drive, right? Same way as a developer and as an end user, you should have that standardization, and I think we're waiting for that moment. So that's my broad spiel. I'll pass it on to Shubham, and we'll give you a far deeper technical insight into what we think.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ram.
I think though that was like a nice, overview of the whole thing. Shubham, yeah, please, sorry, go for it.
Thanks, Ram. I really like the analogy of Web2, right? So I always sort of interrupt in two ways. One is more philosophical, like what exactly is interrupt. So I always imagine it as like wires of Web3. We are in that state where we are still figuring out primitives, how one chain should talk to another, or how even one dApp on one chain should talk to another dApp on totally different chain, right? And when there's a difference between the language, the runtime, how exactly you make it happen. So it's a very interesting problem solve, and Router um, as a company has been working on it since 2020 almost. The genesis of this was uh, we were trying to solve something with Polygon, and there were challenges bridging the funds from one chain to another. The latency was huge, and so we thought of solving this problem. And again, uh, Sandeep helped us figuring out a way how to do this in terms of operations or business. So Router is a layer one blockchain. It's based on Cosmos SDK, which allows message passing between any of the chains it is connected to. So let's say you have 10 chains, all the chains are connected to each other via Router. How Router is trying to do is like, what is the innovation that Router has bring into this ecosystem? So this is one of the protocol which allows you to do logical bridging. So for example, if you take a comparison with your internet routers, so we all know that more sophisticated routers has logical layer. If you have to ban a certain website, if you have to uh, put a firewall rule for the whole network, you have to do it in networking interface. So that's what router allows. Router as a bridge has a logical layer where you can write stuff. So if you have a dApp which is existing on multiple chains, not only one chain, so you can move redundant pieces to uh, one contract which is sitting on outer chain. So we were the first one to come up with the idea of stateful bridging rather than stateless bridging, how you can perform more composable actions, how you can make more composable cross-chain dApps. So that was the genesis of Router in technical terms as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys that, like, there was a need for good um, good infrastructure back in, like, 2019, 2018, or like when I was trying to bridge back in 2020. Even then it was like such a messed up situation. You wouldn't understand what's going on, and you wouldn't know if your funds are transferred or not. So definitely that. So I think Router came up with like a really nice idea for the whole thing, or for the whole ecosystem. um I want to touch on like a little bit more on chain abstraction, Shubham and Ram. I want to know from your point of view, what exactly do you mean by chain abstraction for sure? What are like the biggest hurdles that people, devs, you founders, are facing while building something with chain abstraction, or like building that chain abstraction infrastructure, and how you guys are tackling it?
So chain abstraction, chain abstraction is a very abstract term, to be honest, right? For me, even MetaMask is doing chain abstraction. Um, in some sense, all the protocols which are sort of like hiding the complexities of navigating through multiple instruments of these isolated chains, whether it's their Explorer, whether it's their RPCs, their gas token, or anything, for example. Right? They are in some manner working with chain abstraction. So uh, the problem that we are trying to solve in chain abstraction is like how you can abstract the chains for a developer. So if there can be a dApp where developer can initiate something on X chain and the action can take place on Y chain, and then the settlement again can happen on X chain, or there can be multiple chains involved in this, right? We did a POC around this with one team called Stakestone. So they were having minting controls on totally different chain, but they wanted the tokens to be migrated to scroll chain, and they want to take money from user from any of the chain that we support, and they want to do it everything from their UI, and the user can come from any chain of their choice. So I feel you just open up more ways to interact with your dApp, more ways to interact with your chain from dApp perspective. From user perspective, it's more around um, separating the payments and functionality. So I should not be worried about how I'm going to onboard money to this dApp. The dApp functional logic is very different from the onboarding of money. So you can take money in any token from any of the chain, and then you can perform any of the logic on any of the dApp sitting on any chain. So that is what I personally see as chain abstraction, where user has flexibility of paying it using any token on any chain they have it, and in future maybe even using a centralized exchange, and maybe in even further future maybe using fiat directly to interact with the app, right? And everything is taken care. If I can just use fiat to put it in LSTs or some sort of yield farming strategies or staking strategies, I feel that's the future where we are thinking of in terms of abstracting the chains or dApps.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think also Naruto, going back to one of the questions you raised around one of the biggest challenges we've seen, right? And chain abstraction is just the current version of the narrative a couple of years ago, it was bridging, and then it became something else in the middle. Now it's actually chain abstraction. But there are so many different standards, so many different security frameworks, right? And we've seen this. If you want to be a cross-chain interoperability player, and a good chunk of that basically means bridging. Obviously, that is changing, but still 70 to 80% of that is cross-chain DeFi related bridging. You have to be stronger than the strongest player in that whole value chain, but you are only as strong as the weakest player in the value chain, right? I mean, there was this hack on some bridge between a couple of chains, and before you know it, people are trying to move USDC, the worthless USDC, through your bridge to other side and give your bridge the useless USDC. I mean, again, this goes back to the TVL paradigm, but with the whole interop space, especially if you're transferring assets, you are only, again, you have to be strong. You have to be the strongest part of that whole value chain, but you're only as strong as the weakest link. Right? So that's a big thing. Again, there are design considerations like intents and like zero TVL bridging that likes of Nitro, etc. The router exemplar bridge, right? So we have, a lot of us are thinking through how to sort of minimize, if not completely eliminate, such edge cases. So that's one big challenge. Also I use that analogy about you get to a car and you drive. Even if you go to the automobile industry, even in 1915, right? I mean, you had one car where you had to start it up in the front. You had to get out of the car and crank it up from the bonnet. There's another car you had to, maybe push a piston into the back or something. So there is a huge, there's a proliferation of standards, as you can expect in an industry in an early part of the S curve, if you will, and everybody has their own standards. And the more frustrating part is the industry itself is not mature. In a slightly more mature industry, the players themselves take it upon themselves to come together and align on some common standards if they're competing. But in our industry, and I keep bringing this up, but I don't get much traction because there are entrenched players, large players that will go into a DApp and say, what, give us minting privileges, make our standard the default for your DApp for bridging, right? And it's good in the short term for the player, but that introduces a lot of risk on the ecosystem. Imagine if something happens with Lido, and I think it's Layer Zero, Wormhole, or whoever is supporting them if there's an issue there as well, right? And then there have been known to have issues with all these names. Right? So I think the other issue is the proliferation of standards and how do the players sort of align and agree on a common minimum standard that sort of is best, overall net positive for the community, right? And then I guess it also goes back to the design complexity where you could have a very secure let's say Solana chain or Aptos or whatever, and then you have a very secure framework on some of the chain. But if you're bridging system somewhere, there's a small chink, it is going to be exploited, right? I mean, so it's brutal that way, the complexity of the space, right? And obviously then the proliferation of front ends and that doesn't help. And again, my pet subject these days, the proliferation of liquidity, but it's all siloed. Everybody talks about open Web3, free Web3, and all that, but everybody just wants to launch a L2 and attract all the liquidity and silo it there and make people come into their chains and do dog and pony issues to sort of keep the liquidity there, right? So there are, it's just the human part of it, I guess, but there are many challenges before we see a completely unified end user experience where the chains are totally pushed under the hood.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. Like we're on like very early stages of like chain abstraction or like even the thought of it. I really like the idea that like you guys said that the end user should not be worried about what chain he's interacting with or how to get funds. Those are like something really like key points, because as someone who sends money every now and then to other people for any kind of work or something, I do not want to like bridge to scroll if most of my money is on base or OP or anywhere. I just want to send it. Like even the end user, it's so difficult because I remember my brother was getting into crypto and he goes like, oh, why do I have to like install another wallet? Then, like go on Coinbase, then I get some funds, then send it to my wallet and then send it to other people from another chain. Like he was confused so much, right? So to me that is like a big UX issue as well. So definitely, like I agree, like there's a lot of things that we need to do on the unified front. Yeah, very good thoughts over there. So like moving on, since of course like we have some of the time crunch as well, I want to understand, like there are so many companies that are doing like chain abstraction stuff. What is like the biggest difference that you think that router is providing as compared to like other places? And I'm not like saying that other companies are not doing great work. Of course they are doing great work too, but like what do you think is the key difference over there, and how you guys set yourself apart from everyone else?
Naruto, just to continue on the last point that you mentioned, right? And then I'll come to this
Yeah,
question. So you were mentioning there are challenges that if someone is just trying to clear their debt and the person to whom they're sending the money is sitting on a different chain and is expecting a different asset.
yeah.
So something like this is very easy to build with router. So we have built one primitive which is called like dynamic deposit address. So for example, you can generate a deposit address. For example, I want money in ETH in Ethereum, but user has money in USDT in Arbitrum. So I can send him the deposit address of USDT on Arbitrum, and the moment he sends the money to that address, it will be converted to ETH and will be given to me on Ethereum, and I don't have to do anything. So he is just getting one address to which he has to just send the defined amount of USDT. And the moment that address receives the USDT, it's all converted to ETH and brisked to Ethereum. So from someone who's paying the money, right? They don't have to get into this complication of setting up another wallet or even think about bridging. They have to just send the money to an address and everything is just taken care of. So I feel like innovations like these might make it better. Now I'll just come to your current question, right? How we are different.
Mhm.
I No one knows like who's at the top or who's going to be at the top in next 5-6 years, but we are making sure that whatever we are doing, uh, we are thinking through everything, just taking decent feedback from developers, from users, and making it a user first interop protocol, also developer first, right? So recently we launched one abstraction framework where developers can build small adapters, and those adapters can be rearranged to carry out a complex flow. That flow can achieve cross-chain and same-chain transactions. A simplest example of that would be like paying in USDT, minting uh, STETH on Ethereum, taking it back to Arbitrum, all done in one transaction from user's point of view. So we are more focused on how developers can make more uh, advanced cross-chain dApps with less amount of code. How we can capture the redundant pieces in all these cross-chain communication, and how we can sort of like give it out as an adapter. One more thing, one more thing that we are thinking of is how to bundle the actions, right? When a user is taking multiple actions, like doing multiple set of transactions, first of all, it's a bad UX in terms of clicks, but it's also a bit inefficient from the usage perspective. Like I can if I'm doing 10 transactions on Ethereum, that's me forcing Ethereum to go in consensus those 10 number of times. But if I have a way to batch those 10 transactions in one transaction, then Ethereum has to just go into consensus just once, right? So better utilization of block space, better utilization of gas and resources, everything. So our first focus is on like how to make efficient systems which developers can use to build more sophisticated dApps, and then how to enable these dApps to sort of like abstract all the underlying chains for the users.
Yeah,
Ram?
yeah, absolutely. I think Shubham covered most of it. I'll also add a little bit of the business perspective. I think the adapters that Shubham refers to, right, they've been hugely popular, right? So what has happened also is, we migrated from the uh, POA bridge to the POS chain, the router chain, and along with that, on the actual integration side, these adapters have been super exciting. Just to give you a couple of specific examples, there's a ecosystem project called Stakeys that's using routers cross-chain instance framework, right? And it does a lot of the bundling that Shubham spoke about. But what does it mean in effect? Effectively, what it meant was you have some Ethereum and you want to sort of go deposit it into back then it was Eigenlayer, now it's Eigenlayer Symbiotic, or maybe Etherfire, whatever, right? So you have 15 different steps and 5 different chains, and it takes anything between 25 to 30 minutes and anything between 150 to $200, which is, we're staking 2 to 3 ETH, or even one. That's a big percentage of your. That's a non-trivial percentage of how much money you have to play around with, right? So with adapters and with the cross-chain intent framework, right, one of the things we did was bundling all this and sort of get some sort of a pseudo atomicity, if you will, right? So we cut down cost by 85%, and the time also almost by 90%, right? Within 15 seconds, we are able to achieve. So with Stakeys, folks could literally take the read within 2 to 3 clicks, go to Lido or Kelp or Etherfi and get the LST, roll it into an LRT, go into Eigenlayer directly, right? So that was beautiful, great product, and just one of the many products that that you can actually build leveraging the modular pieces that make up an intelligent cross-chain interop ecosystem design, right? We have, I guess, broadly from a router perspective, is right. I always tell the team we suffer from a conglomerate discount, right? So we have the full-fledged interop framework that rivals anything out there, right? I mean, I do not know if anybody else has the level of composability and interoperability that we have, right? The Nitro bridge is the cheapest out there. We were on a call with the Across guys, and Hart was like, "Wow, how come you're so much cheaper?" Right? So literally, again, uh, some of the things here are that we've done. So we have the full-fledged intent layer, we have the solver, we have the clearing and the settlement layer with the router chain. Right? So we have the whole stack. We have the adapters that can help folks build intelligent cross-chain applications that leverage actually implement chain abstraction. Right. So a challenge or the opportunity now from a router perspective is to get the ecosystem going, build partnerships, uh, get the adoption going with some smart developers, and I guess especially nice segue into what we're doing with Avail, for instance, right? So one of the sharpest OG teams out there. So
Yeah, I definitely like some of your points, like um, doing the bundle transaction so that it doesn't cost too much, the adapters, all these things. I think like you guys are going on a very good route when it comes to, and like that's a route as a router. But I think the major challenge for like, and this is what I've been thinking for like router, Avail, or anyone else building in Web3, is just getting that user flow, uh,
Mhm.
user adoption. And I think it comes
Mhm.
with time, but in general, like when we build out the whole infrastructure, it will become so much easier for the next generation of users as compared to us, like when we started. So I think our teams are actually working hard. The engineers, CTOs, everyone is working really hard. We just need to like keep building.
100%, 100%. Or we could just launch a meme token.
Or yes, or you can just launch a meme token, probably 500K in one transaction and then exit.
Yeah. Sorry, absolutely. Yeah.
So we covered a little bit of like bigger picture for Router as well. I want to move forward to another question that I have, and for like crypto Twitter as well. And we have like I think 2,000 viewers right now, which is really good. Um, and Ram, like we've talked about it on CT, we've seen each other. Avail team, as you said, like you've been in touch with a lot of Avail team, Sandeep as well previously, like Polygon, but Sandeep is also close to us. How do you think like our partnership, comes and helps user at the end of the day, like Router and Avail? How do you want to tell them like what we are building is actually gonna work in their favor? Those kind of questions as well.
Mhm. I think I'll let Shubham chime in on some of the technical aspects, right? But I think fundamentally for us, the Avail partnership was a no-brainer. Just looking at some of the innovations that they have brought forth. And I've obviously known Anurag since his days at Polygon and Prabal and a lot of the founding team, right? And technically, it's far superior to any DS solution out there. No offense to some of the great teams building, but at the moment, honestly, that's probably the fastest out there. And especially in terms of what the router ecosystem is building out, some of the projects that are building on top of it. Right, the feedback from them has also been right. Obviously, there's a technical part of it where there's a certain level of subjectively demonstrable superiority. The other aspect of it is just the hunger of the team, the responsiveness, and across the organization, right, the BD marketing teams, how they want to support you, how they want to sort of move to the next steps. You have a call and then they come back and say, what can we do to take you forward? What are the next steps here? What are the next milestones? And this is specific feedback I've had from a couple of ecosystem projects, right? That is building on both router and Avail, right? So that's also something that I really want to highlight. And Shubham has been working closely with Prabal and the tech folks. Shubham, you want to sort of chime in on some of those aspects as well? Be awesome.
Sure. No, I'm really excited towards the future of how Avail is evolving, how Router is evolving, and how we are planning to execute a lot of these things together. Like couple of points that we are working together is migration of Avail token to all the chains that we support. Then easy interop between the rollups which will be using Avail as TA. We are ideating on that front, directly connecting Avail chain to all the chains that we support is another front that we are ideating upon. Then also like we're recommending a lot of our ecosystem projects to sort of like build on Avail why it's superior to other competitors. These are few verticals where we are exploring and ideating, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there are like so many things that we are working together. And Ram, thank you for like good words that all about the team. I really believe in like a real team, and that's why like I'm working here with everyone here. And then same goes with like our partners as well. We are very we won't say like highly selective, but we are also like very mindful of who we partner with. And when it comes to like Router or anyone else, we make sure that the teams are equally competitive or like just highly driven. And that's what I've felt with you guys as well. So definitely that. One final question that I have for you guys, um, let's say I'm a new dev, and I've been doing, let's say, some crypto stuff for a while. I've returned some Solidity contracts, some other things. I want to learn more about router, and if I want to deploy something on router, like I want to build something using router, what is the best way you think? Number one, um, I can do from a tech side. Number two, I can be supported from the business side. So this is like a question for both of you, like, what can be done on the tech side and what can be done on the business side.
Mhm. Uh, I can share with you after a conversation the social links, etc. But and then obviously there's the dev docs and my Twitter handle cryptoman underscore ram, Telegram handle r square 007, so on and so forth. But we have a super helpful DevRel team. Our developers are also very actively working with the DevRel team as well. And so if you're a developer, just reach out to us in any medium, Telegram, Twitter. The website also has a doc section. There are some testnet dApps as well that you can play around with. But really, I mean, we're going to announce this big grants program in the next few weeks, and we're going to call for applications, etc. So that is one venue. But or yeah, you can always reach out to me or Shubham on Twitter or TG, and always interested to hear ideas, support new builders. Yeah, I mean, this it's not one thing; it's a multitude of things. So take your pick.
Yep, for sure. And so, Shubham, you want to tell us a little bit on, like, if someone has to build, I think like good idea would be like what can be something that can be built using router, or like some kind of use cases.
There's one very interesting use case that we are sort of like trying to help one team build is a decentralized payment gateway, right? And this is more around a Web 2 adoption of Web 3. So I'll just give you an example. So there are these websites or these games which happen online, and they want to onboard as many assets as they can, and the vendor wants settlement in USDT. That too on Tron. So what these vendors they do is they sort of like talk to these payment gateways like Stripe, PayPal, and they opt for a custody model where the broker is taking the funds or taking the crypto in various forms and then settling the vendors in USDT Tron. So now this team is trying to build the whole thing in decentralized fashion where there's direct settlement between users and vendors. So I feel there can be very good applications where, for example, games where you're utilizing Solana for higher performance, but you are utilizing Ethereum for better security. So you keep all the deposits on Ethereum, but you keep all the game data on Solana. So I see a lot of use cases that can be built, and teams are already reaching out with these ideas, and uh, there there are there are a lot of these adapters that we have built which are there to allow developers to build derived apps instead of just writing each and every smart contract. They have to just write the integrations, and they can repurpose all this code, and this code is all audited. We are willing to build more and more adapters for all the teams that we are chatting with. Um, and it's best to reach out to us on Discord for tech related queries, for even like more closer groups on Slack and Telegram. I guess we are just there to help and ideate more.
Yes, absolutely. And I just since we started ideating, I'll also mention two more ideas that are super exciting, and we're actually looking for teams to come and build. Right? I think the current flavor is prediction markets. Everybody's building a prediction market. It's natural, but
No.
I really think that somebody's going to build an amazing cross-chain smart wallet, right? Which is from any. They just don't. The user does not have to worry about which chain his assets are on, right? He just has one unified address. So we are talking to folks like Economy, to Avail, etc. So to look at teams that are already working on a wallet, and sort of we can brainstorm and ideate with them and build this into a truly effective cross-chain and multi-chain wallet. So that's one idea that will obviously talk about more the grants program. And then more importantly, we are going to be working very closely with an emerging L1, not just in terms of bridging, but also in terms of helping out to grow their ecosystem with adapters and some of these other tools that we're talking about. So again, all ears, in any developers out there, please feel free to hit up me or Shubham or anybody that you know on the Router Telegram or Discord or whatever. Yeah.
Yep. I think that's one of the things, like, anyone who reaches out to me or anything, I'm gonna, direct them to you guys. But apart from that, there's Twitter, and then Ram is there, Shubham is there, so you guys can reach out to them. But I think it was a really nice conversation, Ram and Shubham. I really liked, learning more about you guys, where Router is headed. Definitely very excited. And I think if you guys have anything last words, for sure. And then we'll just close the spaces.
No, thank you so much, Naruto. Truly a pleasure to have you, have to finally be on Avail Hot Takes. We were planning this for a bit, so super happy that we finally could make it happen, and speak to you again soon.
Yep. Okay, great talking to you guys. Thanks a lot for attending, everyone. We got 2.5K viewers. We'll see you guys next week. But yeah, thanks, Ram, Shubham. I'll definitely, be in touch with you guys more.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Naruto. It was a pleasure chatting with you as well.